The nurse asked 4 questions. Laura answered everyone. Mark answered none. They loved the same mother, but only one of them had become her emergency plan. Who manages her medication? Laura answered. Who knows her doctors? Laura answered again. Who has the spare key? Mark looked down. 4 days earlier, Laura was standing in her kitchen with one shoe on when her mother called. She had 12 minutes before she needed to leave for work. Hi, Mom. The pharmacy says they can't refill the new pills. Evelyn sounded calm, almost embarrassed to be calling. Laura put her bag back on the counter. Did they say why? No. They told me to call the doctor. I thought maybe you would understand it better. Laura called the pharmacy. The prescription had been entered incorrectly. She called the doctor's office. They asked for the medication name, the dosage, the last appointment date, and the pharmacy number. Laura knew 3 without looking. She found the 4th in a folder beside her laptop. By the time the refill was corrected, Laura had moved her first meeting, answered 2 messages from her manager, and told her mother not to take the old tablets in the bathroom cabinet. Her manager sent another message. Are you joining us? Laura typed, 5 minutes, then deleted it. She joined the meeting from the kitchen with the pharmacy on hold in one ear, and her camera turned off. No one at work knew the delay had begun with one sentence. The pharmacy says they can't refill the new pills. That was how the work entered Laura's day, quietly, without a schedule, without asking what else she had promised to do. The problem had sounded small. It had taken most of her morning. Across America, families do work like this every day. Most of it goes unnoticed. Medication, appointments, bills, the countless small decisions that keep ordinary problems from becoming emergencies. Most of that work begins without a title. Someone simply becomes the person everyone calls. In Laura's family, that person was Laura. At lunchtime, Mark sent her a message. How's Mom? Laura looked at the appointment folder on her desk. An unpaid electric bill was clipped to the front. The pill organizer still needed to be filled. Her mother had mentioned feeling dizzy twice that week. Laura had already booked an appointment. She typed, "She's okay." Mark read the message 2 hours away, between work calls and picking up his son from practice. To Laura, okay meant nothing had become a crisis. To Mark, it meant nothing was wrong. Mark was not absent from his mother's life. He called on Sundays. He sent photographs of the grandchildren. Sometimes he ordered groceries. From 2 hours away, that felt like participation. And because Evelyn rarely described the difficult parts, Mark saw only the version of her life that was easy to discuss. That Sunday, Evelyn told him, "Your sister stopped by yesterday." Mark pictured Laura sitting at the kitchen table, drinking tea. What Laura had actually done was clear expired food, sort 3 weeks of mail, call the insurance company, refill the pill organizer, and drive Evelyn to an urgent appointment because the dizziness had returned. Mark called Laura. "You should have told me Mom was having trouble." "I did." "When?" Laura opened their messages. "Tuesday. I said she was having a harder week." Mark found his reply. "Let me know if you need anything." He offered to help. Mark had offered. But Laura still had to notice the problem, decide what needed to happen, explain the task, send the information, and check whether it was done. Turning his offer into useful help had become one more thing for her to manage. "I had it handled," she said. "Then what was I supposed to do?" Laura did not answer. On Friday evening, Laura sat in the back row of her daughter's school auditorium. Her phone vibrated during the opening song, "Mom." She let it ring twice. On the 3rd vibration, she stepped into the hallway. Evelyn had taken the wrong pill from an old bottle and was frightened. Laura drove across town, checked the labels, called the after-hours nurse, and stayed until her mother felt calm. When she returned, the performance was almost over. Her daughter did not complain. That made it worse. The following afternoon, Mark arrived at Evelyn's house carrying flowers and groceries. Evelyn had brushed her hair. She wore the blue cardigan she saved for visitors. She laughed at one of Mark's jokes and insisted on making coffee. Mark found Laura in the kitchen. "She seems fine." Laura, stop putting medication bottles into a drawer. She seems fine because I keep fixing everything before you get here. I drove 2 hours to be here. I know. I call her every week. I know. I have work, I have kids, you live closer. Laura looked at him. I live closer. I'm not freer. The sentence landed harder than either expected. Every time I ask, you say you've handled it. Because by the time you ask, I already had to. So now I'm supposed to guess. No. You're supposed to understand that asking me to assign you something still leaves me in charge of everything. Mark's face tightened. You've always needed to control everything? Laura laughed once. And you've always been allowed to arrive after everything was done. The argument was no longer about one refill. When they were young, Laura had been the reliable one. She remembered birthdays, carried documents, packed what their parents forgot, and stayed calm when plans changed. Mark had been the one their mother protected. Your sister will handle it, Evelyn used to say. It sounded like praise for Laura. It also gave everyone else permission to step back. Families carry old roles into new problems. The responsible child becomes more responsible. The child protected from responsibility keeps waiting to be asked. Laura had not built that pattern alone. But every time she said, I handled it, the pattern became harder to see. Mark left before dinner. Neither of them called the next day. On Monday night, Evelyn became dizzy while reaching for a glass of water. She fell against the kitchen cabinet and could not stand without help. The fall was not serious, but it brought all three of them to the hospital. Near midnight, a nurse began preparing Evelyn to go home. Who manages her medication? Laura answered. Who knows which doctor changed the dosage? Laura answered again. Who has the insurance information? Laura unlocked her phone. Who has the spare key? Mark opened his mouth, then stopped. He did not know which pills she took each morning. He did not know the doctor's name. He did not know she had stopped driving after dark. He did not even know where she kept the spare key. Evelyn touched the nurse's sleeve. Just call Laura, she said. She knows everything. No one spoke. Laura opened the appointment folder. A small photograph slipped onto the floor. Mark picked it up. It was the two of them as children, standing between their parents on a summer afternoon. Laura was holding his hand. He looked at it, then placed it back inside the folder. Beside Laura's chair sat the pill organizer, the spare key, and a phone filled with messages she had not answered from work. A photograph from her daughter's performance was still open on the screen. For the first time, Mark could see the shape of the work. Laura was no longer helping their mother. She had quietly become the person holding her mother's life together. In the parking lot, Mark did not say, I'll help more. He had said versions of that before. Instead, he asked, what do you do every week that I don't know about? Laura leaned against the car. She skipped the obvious tasks. She told him about the work no one counted, knowing which doctor to call, knowing when their mother was frightened but pretending not to be, knowing which problem could wait until morning and which one could not. Sometimes doing it myself felt easier than explaining it again, Laura said. Mark nodded. It doesn't mean you should have had to do all of it. 2 days later, they sat at Evelyn's kitchen table. Laura placed the pill organizer in the center, then the appointment folder, the bills, and the spare key. For the first time, the work was not hidden inside Laura's phone, her memory, or the hours she had lost. It was sitting in front of all three of them. Mark took responsibility for the calls and paperwork he could handle from 2 hours away. Laura kept some of the nearby appointments. Evelyn chose what she still wanted to handle herself. Not every family can divide caregiving equally. Distance, illness, work, or money can make that impossible. But even when the work cannot be shared equally, it should never remain invisible. Nothing was divided perfectly, but Laura was no longer the entire plan. 2 weeks later, Laura was sitting beside her daughter before another school event. Her phone vibrated. Mom, Laura began to stand. Then a message appeared from Mark. I've got it. Across town, Mark opened the medication list and called the pharmacy. He did not know every answer, but this time he stayed with the problem until it was solved. Sometimes no one noticed that one person had quietly become responsible for everything. Once the work becomes visible, it no longer has to belong to only one pair of hands.